Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive.
Yeah, welcome back.
You know that feeling when someone springs a question on you and you just have to come up with something on the spot?
Oh, yeah,
It's like bam, instant pressure cooker.
totally. And, for this deep dive, we've been digging into this really cool book. It's all about how to get better at, communicating off the cuff, just speaking spontaneously.
And I think that's something that we all struggle with sometimes.
For sure. It's like a universal thing.
So our mission today is to break down those challenges, like what makes it so hard, and then give you guys some real strategies you can actually use to feel more confident and, just be better at it when you have to think on your feet.
Exactly. We want to give you the tools and the insights from this book so you can actually put them into practice.
Because let's face it, when you're put on the spot, a lot of times you're just thinking ugh, this sucks.
Oh, yeah.
You know that feeling of being totally unprepared.
It's like deer in the headlights.
And the thing is, it happens all the time, right?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like you're at a wedding and suddenly they're shoving a microphone in your face for a toast.
Oh, God, yeah. Or you're in a virtual meeting and it's like, bam, CEO wants to chat with you.
Or you're at a networking event, you have to make small talk with someone who could be like a huge contact for you.
Right, or you just finished a presentation and it's Q&A time.
Oh yeah, those are the worst.
And let's not forget about those moments when you have to recover from a total slip up.
Oh, we've all been there.
Like you said something awkward, or the tech totally fails during your big pitch, or you need to apologize for something you did.
Or even those times when you totally blank on someone's name.
Ugh, but worse.
Or you forget the point you were about to make.
Yeah, all those things, they require you to just think on your feet and come up with something.
And it's like a physical reaction too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty.
It's like your body goes into fight or flight mode.
This book actually calls it plumbing reversal.
Plumbing reversal.
Sweaty palms, but your mouth goes dry.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then you start stammering and rambling.
Yeah, you go off on tangents you weren't even planning to talk about.
Maybe you end up just staring at your shoes.
And then the ums and uckas start creeping in.
Oh God, the ums and uckas.
We all have them.
But here's the thing, and this is something this book really emphasizes. It's not like some people are just born being good at this.
Right, it's not like some magical talent.
It's not like you have to be naturally quick-witted or something.
Exactly. The book makes it clear that it's really about practice and preparation.
Anyone can get better at it.
Absolutely. It's about learning to break those bad habits and making better choices about how you communicate when you're caught off guard.
It kind of reminds me of that thing Michael Bay said.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Remember after that super awkward live appearance he had?
Oh, yeah.
He was like, I guess live shows just aren't my thing.
Classic.
It just shows you how people think. It's like, you either have it or you don't.
Right. But that's not true at all.
And the thing is, even one bad experience can really stick with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The book tells the story about a librarian named Irma.
Okay.
And way back in high school, her teacher totally humiliated her for giving a wrong answer in class.
Oh, no.
And that one experience, it shaped her whole career path.
Really?
She purposely chose a job where she thought she wouldn't have to do much unplanned talking.
Wow. So she let that one bad experience dictate her choices.
Yeah, and it's kind of a vicious cycle, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You get nervous about being put on the spot, so you do worse, and then that just makes you more nervous the next time.
Absolutely. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So this book lays out this really helpful 6-part method for understanding these obstacles and learning how to actually excel at spontaneous communication.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground.
It talks about managing anxiety and letting go of that need to be perfect all the time.
Right. And it really emphasizes the importance of having an open mindset.
Being willing to be flexible and adapt to the situation.
Exactly. And it goes into the nitty-gritty of how to be a better listener.
Because that's huge, right?
Oh, yeah, huge.
And it talks about how to structure your thoughts quickly when you're on the spot.
Yeah, even if you don't have time to prepare.
And how to really focus on your main ideas so you can communicate them clearly.
It's all about being clear and concise.
And the book also goes into specific situations where spontaneous speaking is really important.
Oh, yeah, like what kind of situations?
Like giving and receiving feedback on the fly.
Oh, yeah, that can be tough.
Or navigating job interviews where they always throw those curveball questions at you.
Right, or pitching your ideas to someone.
Oh, that's
or
tough.
even just making small talk at a networking event.
Or giving a toast at a wedding or a tribute to someone.
And even knowing how to apologize sincerely when you messed up.
Yeah, it's like different situations require different approaches.
Absolutely.
It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So the book makes it clear that becoming good at this is a process.
Right. It's not going to happen overnight.
It actually compares it to learning a new sport.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Like, first you have to learn the basic rules and techniques.
The fundamentals.
Exactly. And then it's all about practice and, trying things out and seeing what works for you.
And being willing to take some risks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not going to hit a home run every time.
And the author actually shares this story that I think really illustrates this point.
Oh, yeah. What's the story?
So even though they'd had tons of practice with spontaneous speaking growing up, they were in this job interview,
All right.
and they got this completely unexpected question about onions.
Onions?
No, I'm serious. Onions. And even with all their experience, they felt that fight or flight response kick in.
Oh, wow. So even the pros get nervous sometimes.
Exactly. It just shows you that no matter how prepared you think you are, the unexpected can always throw you off.
That's why these strategies are so important.
Right, because they give you tools to deal with those moments.
So let's dive into some of those strategies, starting with how to manage that anxiety, because it's real.
Oh yeah, it's definitely real.
So the book makes this point, and I think it's really important. And it's not about getting rid of anxiety completely.
Really?
Yeah, actually, it talks about this thing called the Yerkes-Dodson law.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
It basically says that a little bit of stress can actually be good for you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like it can motivate you and help you focus.
So a little bit of nerves before you have to speak can actually be helpful.
Exactly. It makes you more alert, more in the moment.
But too much anxiety, and that's when it becomes a problem.
Right. It's like when that anxiety spikes too high, it floods your system and you can't think straight.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly the right amount of tension to keep you on your toes, but not so much that you freak out.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the book gives some really practical tips for managing that anxiety in the moment.
Okay, like what?
One of them is to literally cool your body down, specifically your hands.
Your hands.
Yeah, so apparently your hands, along with your forehead and the back of your neck, they play a big role in regulating your body temperature.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you hold something cold, like a water bottle, it can actually help counteract some of those physical stress responses.
Like your heart racing and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author even says they use this trick themselves before they have to speak.
That's a good one. It's simple, and most people have a cold drink nearby.
Right, exactly.
So what else can you do in the moment to buy yourself some time when you're feeling flustered?
Well, another technique is to ask some generic, open-ended questions back to the audience.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that takes the focus off of you for a second and gives you a chance to gather your thoughts.
Like a little breather.
Exactly. The author talks about how when they were teaching, if they lost their train of thought, they just asked the class something like, how would you apply this to your own life?
That's smart.
Yeah, gets everyone else thinking and gives you a moment to regroup.
It's like hitting a reset button.
Ooh.
Now, what about that fear of completely blanking out?
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Like your mind just goes blank and you have no idea what to say?
The book talks about the importance of structuring your remarks, even when you're speaking spontaneously.
But how can you do that when you're just making things up as you go along?
Well, structure, even a simple one, gives you a roadmap.
So you don't get lost.
Exactly. It's like having a mental outline.
And it makes it way harder to totally blank out.
Right, because you have those key points to guide you.
So even though you might not have time to plan everything out in advance, you can still create some kind of structure in the moment.
Exactly. And we'll talk more about specific structures later on, but even just having a basic framework in mind can make a huge difference.
Okay, let's talk about those verbal crutches.
Oh, you mean like the ums and
Yeah, and the likes and the
fillers that we all use?
They can be so distracting.
They really can, both for the speaker and the listener.
So the book actually links those filler words to our breathing.
Our breathing.
Yeah, it suggests that we try to land our phrases more deliberately.
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by land.
So basically, it's about consciously ending your sentences in a way that forces you to take a breath.
Oh, okay, I see.
And this naturally creates pauses in your speech.
Which is actually a good thing.
Exactly. Pauses to give your audience time to process what you've just said.
And it gives you time to think.
Right. And it can also help you get rid of those filler words.
So it's like syncing your speech with your breath.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the book even suggests practicing this just by talking through sentences and paying attention to where you naturally run out of breath.
That's a good tip.
So it's all about being more aware of your breathing and how it affects your speech.
Makes sense.
Now, the book also talks about creating a spontaneous speaking toolkit.
A toolkit? That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's basically a collection of things that can help you manage anxiety and feel more prepared.
Okay, like what kind of things?
Well, it can be personalized, but the book suggests things like a cold bottle of water.
Right, for cooling down your hands.
Exactly. Or maybe a lozenge if you tend to get a dry mouth when you're nervous.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And even a little note card with a positive affirmation on it or a key point you want to remember.
So it's like a little emergency kit for your nerves.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
It's about having those things readily available so you can use them in the moment.
Makes sense.
Now, after a spontaneous exchange, the book talks about the importance of self-awareness.
Self-awareness, what do you mean by that?
So it's about taking a few minutes to reflect on how it went.
Oh, like a debrief.
Yeah, exactly. Were you being too hard on yourself? Did you notice any patterns in the kinds of thoughts you were having? And did those thoughts actually help you or make things worse?
It's like analyzing your performance,
Yeah, but for communication.
so you can learn from your mistakes.
Exactly.
I like that.
And the book also introduces this idea of hacking heuristics.
Hacking heuristics. Now that sounds complicated.
It's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay, so what are heuristics?
They're basically mental shortcuts that your brain uses to make decisions quickly.
Oh, okay, so like rules of...
Exactly, and they can be helpful in everyday life.
But not so much for communication.
Right, because they can limit your creativity and make you sound like you're on autopilot.
Okay, so how do you hack them?
It's about becoming more aware of those automatic responses you have.
Like what?
Like maybe you always start your emails the same way, or you have a go-to phrase when you don't know how to answer a question.
Oh yeah, I do that.
We all do. It's about catching yourself doing those things and trying to break out of those patterns.
So you can be more thoughtful and responsive.
Exactly.
That's a good challenge.
And the book even suggests a 7-day challenge where you try to identify and disrupt your most common communication heuristics.
7 days. That's a good goal.
So it's all about becoming more mindful of how you communicate.
Okay, makes sense.
Now let's talk about mistakes, because I think the fear of messing up is a big obstacle for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, for sure. Nobody wants to look foolish.
And the book really challenges this idea that you have to get it right every time.
Especially when you're speaking spontaneously.
Exactly. It introduces this concept of make mistakes.
Make mistakes, I like that.
It's about reframing mistakes as learning opportunities.
Instead of seeing them as failures.
Right. The book tells this great story about a software company that actually had Failure Fridays.
Failure Fridays.
Yeah, where they would celebrate and learn from mistakes that people made during the week.
Oh wow, that's a cool idea.
And the rule was it had to be a new mistake.
So they were encouraging people to take risks and try new things.
Exactly, because that's how you learn and grow.
I love that.
So it's all about changing your perspective on mistakes.
Yeah, seeing them as a natural part of the learning process.
And not being afraid to make them.
That's a great takeaway.
Now, what about shifting your overall perspective on spontaneous speaking itself?
Like how we view it.
Exactly. The book encourages you to think of it less as a performance and more as a conversation.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because conversations are usually more relaxed and less judgmental.
Right, you don't rehearse for conversations.
And you're more focused on connecting with the other person.
Then on saying the perfect thing.
So even though you might feel like you're being evaluated when you have to speak spontaneously, it's usually not as intense as like a formal presentation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So trying to shift your mindset to that more conversational approach can help reduce some of that anxiety.
I like that.
Now, the book outlines 4 key mindset shifts that can really help you approach spontaneous speaking as an opportunity rather than a threat.
Okay, let's break those down.
The first one is moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Okay, so what's the difference between those?
So a fixed mindset is the belief that your abilities are basically set in stone.
Like, you're born with a certain amount of talent and that's it.
Exactly, whereas a growth mindset is the belief that you can always improve and learn new things.
So it's about believing in your potential to grow.
Right, and if you have a fixed mindset, you might shy away from challenges because you see them as threats.
Like, you don't want to fail and prove that you're not good enough.
But with a growth mindset, you embrace those challenges because you see them as opportunities to learn.
So it's about how you view failure.
Exactly. And the book suggests taking small steps to develop specific skills.
Like what?
Like maybe you identify one communication skill you want to work on,
Okay.
and then you come up with a plan to practice that skill.
So it's about taking action.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good first step.
What's the second mindset shift?
So the second one is moving from thinking about yourself to thinking about your audience.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
When you're nervous about speaking, it's natural to focus on yourself.
Like how you're coming across and whether you're going to mess up.
But the book says that if you shift your focus to your audience, it can really change your perspective.
Like, who are they? What do they care about? How are they feeling?
Right, it takes the pressure off of you and makes it more about connecting with them.
And meeting their needs.
Exactly.
So instead of seeing it as a test, you see it as an opportunity to share something valuable with them.
I like that.
And the book encourages you to really observe the social context you're in.
Like, what are the unspoken rules and expectations in this situation?
Right. So you can tailor your communication accordingly.
Makes sense.
What's the third mindset shift?
So the third one is to move away from saying yes, but, or no, and to embrace the yes and principle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's this idea from improv comedy.
Oh, that's cool.
Instead of rejecting an idea, you build on it.
So you're always looking for ways to move the conversation forward.
Exactly. And it creates a more collaborative and creative atmosphere.
And it can lead to some really unexpected and interesting outcomes.
The book even has this fun game where you give each other imaginary gifts.
Oh, that sounds fun.
And no matter what the gift is, you have to say yes.
I like that.
It's a good way to practice active listening and building on each other's ideas.
So it's about being open and receptive.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the final mindset shift?
So the last one is to let go of dwelling on past mistakes and to embrace the next play mindset.
The next play.
Yeah, it's like in sports, you can't change what already happened, so you just focus on the next play.
So you don't get bogged down in regret or self-criticism.
Right, you just learn from it and move on.
And the book suggests this little mental trick when you catch yourself dwelling on the past.
What's the trick?
You just tell yourself, maybe?
Maybe?
Yeah, it's a way to suspend judgment and shift your focus to the present moment.
So you can take action.
Exactly.
I like that.
The book also gives this great example of how to reframe challenges as opportunities.
Oh yeah, what's the example?
So the author had to lay off a bunch of employees.
Oh wow, that's a tough situation.
Yeah, it was a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But instead of just focusing on the negative, they looked for ways to highlight the positive.
Like what?
They focused on the resources and support that were available to the employees.
And how they could help them find new opportunities.
Exactly. And they even spent time with each person brainstorming career options.
Wow, that's really going above and beyond.
And the amazing thing is a lot of the employees actually thank them for being so compassionate and supportive.
That's amazing. It just shows you that even in a really tough situation, you can still make a positive impact.
Yeah, it's all about your mindset.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about active listening because it's so crucial for effective, spontaneous communication.
It really is. You can't have a good conversation if you're not listening.
And this book has some really interesting insights on active listening.
Like what?
Well, it talks about this guy, Fred Dust, who was advising the Greek government during a really tough economic crisis.
Okay.
And during this big public meeting, he realized that people were really uneasy about a proposed land sale.
Even though they weren't saying it directly.
Exactly. And instead of sticking to his prepared remarks, he decided to address those unspoken concerns head on.
Oh, wow, that's risky.
Yeah, it was a gamble, but it turned out that the prime minister felt like he had said exactly what everyone was thinking.
So it paid off.
Big time. The government actually decided not to go through with the land sale.
Wow, just because he listened to those unspoken concerns.
Exactly. It shows you how powerful active listening can be.
And the book also mentions this technique called the killer last question.
The killer last question.
Yeah, it's this thing that Deeper Schifrin recommends using in interviews.
What is it?
You just ask the interviewee if there's anything important that hasn't been covered yet.
And then you just wait.
Yeah, and you listen really carefully to what they say.
So it's about giving them space to share what's on their mind.
Exactly.
That's a good one.
So active listening is about more than just hearing the words.
It's about paying attention to the whole context, the nonverbal cues, the emotions, the things that aren't being said.
Right. It's about really understanding where the other person is coming from.
So what are some practical things we can do to become better active listeners?
Well, first you have to slow down.
Slow down.
Yeah, you're thinking, you're speaking, and you're listening.
Okay.
And be present in the moment.
Like put your phone away.
Exactly. Minimize distractions.
Got it.
And take deep breaths.
To calm your nerves.
Exactly. It helps you focus.
And what about mantras?
Yeah, you can use mantras to remind yourself to stay present and pay attention.
Okay, good tip.
And make eye contact.
To show that you're engaged.
Right. And use nonverbal cues, like nodding.
Yeah, to let the speaker know you're following along.
And then reflect on what you're hearing and ask open-ended questions.
To encourage them to elaborate?
And be mindful of your own nonverbal cues.
Like, what kind of signals are you sending?
Exactly, and pay attention to their nonverbal cues too.
So it's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
And the book also suggests practicing pausing.
Pausing. Why is that important?
It gives you time to process information, and it gives the speaker time to think.
No. Okay, that makes sense.
So it's about creating space in the conversation.
I like that.
Now, what about creating space for your own internal reflection during a conversation?
Like, how do you do that when you're trying to keep up with what the other person is saying?
Well, one way is to ask clarifying questions.
Like what?
Things like, can you explain that further? Or how does that relate to this?
Oh, okay, so you're not just accepting what they're saying at face value.
Exactly. You're digging deeper, and it gives you time to think.
And it shows that you're really listening.
Right.
What else?
Another technique is to paraphrase what they've said.
Like summarizing it in your own words.
Yeah, it shows that you're understanding them, and it gives you a chance to process the information.
And it can help clarify any misunderstandings.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
And try to notice what hasn't been said.
Like the underlying emotions or assumptions.
Right, because those can be really important.
And it shows that you're paying attention to more than just the words.
The book tells this story about a guy named John who had to give a eulogy for his grandmother.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one.
And he really listened to both his own feelings and the emotions of the people around him.
And it helped him give a really authentic and meaningful tribute.
Exactly. It shows you how important it is to be tuned in to all those different levels of communication.
That's a great story.
Now let's talk about structure. Because it might seem counterintuitive to talk about structure when we're talking about spontaneous speaking.
Yeah, like how can you have structure when you're just making things up as you go?
Well, the book argues that structure is actually really important, even in unscripted moments.
Really?
Yeah, it challenges the idea that structure makes you sound robotic or stiff.
Okay, so why is structure important?
Because it provides a logical flow for your thoughts.
So it's easier for people to follow you.
Exactly, and it helps you stay on track.
And it makes the information more memorable.
Right, and it also reduces the cognitive load on you as the speaker.
Because you don't have to figure out how to organize your thoughts in real time.
Exactly, you already have a framework in place.
I see.
And the book gives some examples of common narrative structures that we see all the time.
Oh, like what?
Like in music, you have the ABBCB rhyme scheme.
Oh, yeah, that's like a classic song structure.
And in literature, you have the ABDCE story arc.
Oh, yeah, like the hero's journey.
Exactly. Those structures give the content a clear beginning, middle, and end.
So it feels complete and satisfying.
And they make the information easier to understand and remember.
That makes sense.
So even when you're speaking spontaneously, having some kind of structure in mind can be really helpful.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value of structure.
So what are some of the benefits of using structure in your spontaneous speaking?
Well, first of all, it helps keep your audience engaged.
Because they know where you're going.
Exactly. And it enhances memory.
Because people tend to remember the gist of things rather than every detail.
And structure helps create that gist.
Right. And it also makes it easier for people to spread your message.
Because it's clear and concise.
Exactly. And ultimately, it makes the information more meaningful and impactful.
Because it has a purpose and a direction.
Right. And the book even shares this advice from Raymond Nasser, who works with entrepreneurs.
Okay, what does he say?
He says that when you're pitching your business to investors, you should always structure your presentation as a story. Yeah, with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
So it's more engaging and persuasive.
Exactly. It's not just a bunch of facts and figures.
It's a narrative that people can connect with.
And the book also introduces some specific structures that you can use.
Oh, what?
One of them is the comparison, contrast, conclusion structure.
Okay, so when would you use that one?
It's good for when you need to compare and contrast different ideas or options.
Like to help people make a decision.
Exactly. You start by talking about how the things are similar, then you talk about how they're different, and then you draw a conclusion based on that analysis.
Okay, that's a good one.
And we talked earlier about how structure can ease the cognitive load on you as the speaker.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, when you have a structure in mind, it's like you've already solved the how to say it part.
So you can focus more on the what to say.
Exactly, and that frees up your mental energy to think about the content.
That makes sense.
And it can make you feel more confident because you're not scrambling to figure out what to say next.
I like that.
And the book calls one particular structure the Swiss Army knife of spontaneous speaking.
The Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, it's the what so what now what framework.
Okay, I've heard it that way.
It's really versatile. You can use it in so many different situations.
So how does it work?
You start by describing something, the what.
Okay.
Then you explain why it's important. the so what.
And then you tell people what to do about it, the now what.
Exactly. It's so simple, but so effective.
And the book has an example of how to use it?
Yeah, it talks about Sarah Zeitler, who used it when she had to present for a colleague at a really important meeting.
And it helped her nail the presentation.
Exactly. It just shows you how powerful this structure can be.
I'm definitely going to try that one.
And the book mentions a few other helpful structures too.
Like what?
Like the problem solution benefit structure, which is good for persuasive communication.
Okay.
And the STAR method, which is often used in interviews.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
So the key takeaway is to start building a mental toolkit of these structures.
And practice using them
Exactly. The book even suggests practicing in everyday conversations.
so you can get comfortable using them.
And then reflecting on how it went, maybe even writing down your thoughts.
And getting feedback from people you trust.
Exactly. It's all about honing those skills.
So even though spontaneous communication is unscripted, it doesn't have to be completely random.
Right. By preparing yourself with these structures and mindsets, you can actually become really good at it.
And even enjoy it.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me.
What small step can you take today to prepare for your next spontaneous speaking opportunity?
No matter how big or small it might be.
Exactly, because even small steps can make a big difference.
I like that.
So until next time, happy speaking, everyone.